Hello, Biz Catalyst 360 and Northern Lights Publishing welcome you to RoundTable 360 with your host and moderator, Joseph Carabas. RoundTable 360 brings together people in the creative fields, dancers, thespians, poets, actors, musicians, authors, and others from across the globe in conversation about things that are relevant, irrelevant, serious, and fun. Today's episode is Art as Therapy, the journey of art as a way of healing. Art has been a tool of self-discovery, emotional release, and personal exploration since proto-humans put handprints on rock walls. Today's guests include Creativity Guide, expressive and experimental artist Sarah Bowden, surreal mythologist, founder, and artist at Quantum Keyhole Studio, Matt Mays, author, speaker, mastermind leader, and publisher Teresa Velarde, and a host of others. Stay with us and enjoy. Welcome, everyone. Here we are in Roundtable 360. Today's topic is Art as Therapy, which will be led by artistic alchemist Sarah Bowden. Sarah, raise your hands and smile. Very good. There she is, up in the corner on my screen. Just so our readers, yeah, can you tell I'm an author? Just so our listeners and viewers know, none of us here on the panel are licensed therapists. We may be in therapy because of our artwork, but none of us are licensed therapists. But we all explore that through our work, through our inventiveness, through our creativity. So I hope you'll enjoy. And Sarah, would you please lead us?
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here this evening for me, over here in the UK. Yeah, I thought that I would start talking about this subject, which is really close to my heart, by just giving a very, very brief background to why I'm doing what I'm doing, because that's very relevant for this topic of art as therapy. So 6 years ago, my mum died, and my life kind of just fell apart. I started to behave in a way that was incredibly unrecognizable. I was consumed by grief, and I became the ultimate wild woman, or rather feral woman, really. And everything around me completely suffered. So my 17-year relationship with my then partner fell apart very rapidly, and my children got caught up in the crossfire of it all. And I eventually had an emotional breakdown, probably more than one really, but one that I can sort of really remember. And whereas I was holding it all together, going to work as a teacher, I suddenly found myself not even being able to do the work that I had done for 18 years, standing on my head, and absolutely loving as well. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this because we've all have our personal traumas, big T's, little T's. But that was really the moment when I had to do something. I had this defining moment of life can't carry on the way that it's carrying on. I need to do something about it. So the first crazy thing I did was I left my 18-year career as a teacher without a plan. Little did I know it was on the brink of COVID, 2020, and I didn't know, I thought COVID was going to be over in like 2 weeks, for the lockdown, that is. And I had absolutely no idea how, none of us obviously did, but some people had a bit more of an understanding of it. I certainly didn't. And so I just gave him my notice because I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And I had the good fortune of meeting Joseph actually during my time, during this state of depression. I don't know why he stuck around and continued to be my friend, because I wasn't myself at all. But I think that he'll probably testify that I'm a very changed person 6 years on, or 5 years on from 2020 when I first sort of met him. And really it's the transformation that I've had is all down to investing time into my personal creativity. So it started with poetry to begin with, which is how I met Joseph. And then once I'd sort of kind of just done everything I could with poetry, or felt that I'd done everything I could with poetry, I started painting and I started making art. My art is very, very different to what it was like 5 years ago. And I am a very, very different person. And before we came on to this program this evening, I sat down and I thought, how have I used my art to transform? How has it been part of my therapy process? And I thought that there was like three different main levels really that I have been on through my journey as an artist. And the first level was just simply the ability to create something. You know, I just think when you're in that creator energy, you know, you're stepping into this, you know, being able to create something magical that wasn't there before is a really thrilling thing. And to be able to say, I made this, you know, or I wrote this, I created this book, I created this piece of art, I created this role
Oops.
in this television program, you know, because it meant that I was just in an energy that didn't feel negative in any way. It was just totally positive, even when things didn't work, you know, or didn't look right. It felt like I've created this, and that was really magical. And then it started to open my eyes up to the magic of the world. I started to see things through the eyes of an artist, a creator. You know, I would notice again a dewdrop in the grass, the color of the leaves as they turn during autumn, the way, you know, natural world sort of moves together and creates all these amazing textures and lines and so on. And my life became joyful as a result of stepping into that creator energy. Then on the second level of my art journey stroke transformation, I found it therapeutic because it just keeps you fully present. You know, as I'm drawing or painting or doodling, I have forgotten about all the crap that's going on in my life. You know, I sometimes go into such a meditative state, I don't even realize an hour's gone past. And, you know, and dinner's got to be made. So I can lose myself in the process. So that was like the second level. So the first level was just sort of opening up my eyes to the wonders of the world again. The second was to feel that beautiful, relaxing, meditative state that art takes you into. And then the third level, which is probably what I feel is the most deepest level for me, is to start using my art as a way of, you know, as a really deep form of self-expression. So thinking about symbolism, thinking about things that really speak to my heart and my soul and my spirit. And that then took another level of therapeutic benefit that I felt my art gave me.
Sarah,
So
let me
yeah,
let me interrupt for 1 second, and I apologize.
no,
I'm kind of I totally accept what you said about getting lost in the ecstasy, if you will, the ecstasy of creation, because I know that for me, and not being vulgar, if it were not for the requirements in my body, you know, Susan very often has to say to me, "Have you eaten today? What? What food? What are you talking about?" But I'm also curious on your journey, and we have known each other for a while, and everyone else here in the room has the act of creation been one of personal exploration and realization. You know, in the process, like, you know, Sabine, being on stage, being in front of a camera and filling a role do you discover things about yourself which you either recognize, I can't bring this to the role, or I have to put this into the role? Um, you know, Matt, you're a mythological artist, I believe. So in your process, is there something which, excuse me, you realize needs to be in your art, or should be removed from your art? Same thing with Amy, same thing with, um, well, Michelle, I appreciate the pup, but I'm not sure what your, media choices are. Anybody want to jump in here and help me out a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say first, Sarah, I'm really taken by your statements about losing yourself in the art and allowing it to be something that comes through you and something that enlivens your life. And really, when people talk about creativity, my mind goes to aliveness. My mind goes to us being present and being lit up in the moment, and that being able to color our experience and turn the ways that our minds go in all sorts of different ways. And to your question, Joseph, being a mythical artist, I really have to dance this fine line many times because I have to honor all of the lore of the myths, all of the symbolism, all of what the mythical figures actually represent, and all that goes into them, and really doing them justice on canvas. And at the same time, I am the prism through which that art comes through. So there's my own original way. Like, why did, I'm going to get fairly mystical here. Why did the ideas choose me to come through? So how can I do my best to magnify what is coming through and really represent them? And so some things I have to say just belong there on canvas, really, to represent them, and are pretty essential. And at the same time, I'll sometimes take a zig here and a zag there, and without deviating from the intention or the meaningfulness of each one of these deities, then the idea is to bring together all these ideas as a composite in each one of the paintings or the drawings or whatever it is that I happen to be doing. So it intensifies and magnifies the meaning to bring out that sense of aliveness through each one of these pieces of artwork.
Yeah, I really resonate with your idea of, how did these ideas choose me? Because I feel exactly the same. I feel like it's a really sort of spiritual experience that I'm having, that actually I mean, maybe I'm like you, I'm not sure, but I don't often have an idea of where I'm going with it. I know that I'm an animal artist and use the animal wisdom and the spiritual aspects of animals behind my art, but I'll start with like an abstract and then the animal will emerge, and I just wonder sometimes why this happens. And I look back at it and I go, gosh, did I create that? I don't even know where that came from. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's a beautiful experience.
Ken, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I want to talk about one of my favorite concepts, repression. And I don't mean it in some psychological sense as much as in a political sense. I think as an artist myself, much of my motivation and much of the underlying content that I create has to do with what I have been told we are not allowed to say. I think all of us have that material that we had in our childhoods, perhaps, in our societies, perhaps, in our gender assignments, for one, and we were never allowed to say these things or think these things. And I think that art comes in large part because that stuff is bubbling inside of us. And to get back to Joseph's vulgarity, besides eating, I'm sure occasionally you have to eliminate. And I don't remember exactly how I was toilet trained. Or if I was toilet trained, perhaps I wasn't, given the way I produce art. I have a feeling that there are all these things we're not supposed to talk about, not supposed to deal with, and that they often come through. And I've got other things, but I think that's enough for right now.
Thank you, Ken. Amy, please.
Well, I can say that definitely when I'm feeling inspired, which comes, from spirit, I'm not hungry. I'm not thirsty. I don't have to go to the bathroom, and I can be completely enmeshed in what I'm working on for 10, 12, like literally 14 hours. And when I come out of that, I guess there's various words for it, being in the zone or something. I literally go like, oh yeah, like there's the rest of the world. I just, and but in those time periods, and your art form isn't necessarily just art. You can be enmeshed in your work, in your art, in a sport, in nature, and when you are in there, there are different spirits or entities or voices or whatever you choose to call it. They're speaking to you, they're guiding you, they're telling you which way to go or not go. um Matt said, you zig or you zag, or like I've spoken to I used to work with some of the top surgeons. I don't know if it was in the world, but they're like, these are top surgeons and they're very artistic people. And if you ask any one of them, how did you know, like, clamp this little thing over here or clamp this little thing over here, every single one of them will say, there's this little voice of intuition inside of me that tells me what to do. You won't find it in any textbook or medical journal. It comes from the voice within. And when at least when I'm in those spaces, all of the human things that we have to do all day every day, they're not there for me. They're not apparent. And I used to joke when I would be working on something, like I used to paint huge murals on walls. And people would say, "Oh, well, how do you do how do you do it?" And my rule was nothing in, nothing out. And because when you're immersed in those spaces, it's not that you don't have time to think of it, it doesn't occur to you to think of it.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. Mark.
Thank you. Joseph, did you want to say something in response to what Amy was saying? Is that why you raised your hand when you did?
Well, I was going to talk about things that she may not have mentioned by name, but which I have a lot of background in, concepts of flow from Mahaly Csikszentmihalyi's work, and also intuition as being a channeled process. But I would rather have you talk right now because I'm wordy enough.
Okay. Well, thank you. From the beginning of this discussion, I've been writing words, and I think I see a connection. So the first thing I wrote was why, when Sarah first started talking about the things she was doing. Then I wrote self-expression. Then when Matt was talking, and being sort of a devotee of mythology myself, I wrote down spirit guides and archetypes. And then when Ken was talking, I wrote down repression. And I wonder if the thing that connects all of those things, whether we're conscious of it or not when we're creating, is healing. And I wonder if in some way, whether we recognize it or not, I can't even believe I'm saying this because I don't feel like I'm this kind of person, generally speaking, but I wonder if we are not being called to heal ourselves by the creative work we do.
Yeah, I'd actually like to revert to Sarah's painting back there. If we could zoom in on all the little tiny hand strokes or finger strokes, or if she used a brush or a sponge or a stick. We have no idea. I'm sure she probably used all of them. When I created murals, I did. I would pick up all types of odds and ends because it made different textures and different lines and everything like that. If you zoomed in on that, there's not a book in the world that's going to tell you to do what she did. But it's her healing, it's her flow, and her fingers created it, and the energy that was inside of her went out into her artwork. It was a huge energetic release. And when Kenneth was talking about repression, that's all the energy that we hold inside. And if we can learn how to switch the energy that we have inside and put it on the outside of us, I think we'd create something bigger than ourselves and better than ourselves. And you probably can't even replicate it if you wanted to. I don't think, Sarah, I don't think you could replicate what's behind you. But it's beautiful and it's gorgeous and it speaks to your soul. And if you tried to make another one, it would be similar, but it wouldn't be the same.
May I respond, Joseph, just very quickly? Is that okay? I just wanted to say that that's exactly how it all works, you know, and it's that intuitive power that is just so transformative to use. It's a very feminine energy, which is something that I'm really interested in using and recapturing. But also going back to what Mark was saying about it being healing, absolutely, and being called to heal ourselves. And I believe really strongly that if we heal within, we heal without. And, you know, and that's what I think creatives do. We want to heal ourselves, perhaps first and foremost, but we also want to support others in their healing and the world in its healing. And that's a really magical place to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to admit that this, to me, is one of the most profound conversations we've had on the roundtable, mainly because, in my estimation, we're dealing with really deep personal subject matter for each of us. And I congratulate us all that we're comfortable enough to be able to do that. The concept of flow that Amy was talking about, that is something that I'm sure many people have done research on, but the one I continuously go to is Mahali Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote the great books on flow and the sense of mastery, that it does not matter your discipline, as Amy was saying. You can be doing work, you can be creative, you can be riding your bicycle. You know, and for my purposes, sometimes when I'm boxing, I'm gone. You know, mainly because I got knocked out. No, just kidding. Actually, it's because I box with a dummy, mechanical dummy, and I'm just there, and everything else is gone for the length of time that I'm doing it, until I hear the thing beep at me that, you know, you've been doing this for a while. And I I offer that when we get into those flow states, as Amy was saying, everything else has to go away, because we are, I'll use the term elevating. We are becoming more than ourselves. We are accessing something that is outside of us and making it part of us. Please feel free to tell me I'm, you know, way off the deep end. The other thing was intuition. Again, based on my studies and research, intuition is something that people gain from experience. And I'm not going to deny channeling and higher power and whatever else you want to call it. But I do know that, again, as Amy was saying, and also as Sarah was saying, people have had a lot of experience. They will get into the zone, the flow zone, if you will, and they'll know what to do. They just do it. They don't think to themselves, how am I supposed to behave here? How am I supposed to act? It's just right there and it's available and it's immediate to them. And then to go to what Mark said about healing, and I will speak for myself, everything I write is an aspect of my healing. The great joy for me is that based on the comments and reviews and feedback I get from people, it also benefits them. They feel a sense of relief. They feel like something has changed about them when they've read my work. I cannot think of a greater joy for me than knowing that people have benefited. Just as I'm about to let you all benefit by being quiet. Donna, please.
Hi. I agree with that very much, and would like to preface my experiences with a little explanation. I'm not too fond of reality, and so I write mysteries that come out the way I think they should, the way the world should, in my opinion. And when I was starting out, I thought, well, what I'm doing isn't very valuable. It's making me happy, but I'm not kidding myself that it's worth much to anyone else. But then I got published, and I was at book signings. And now and then people would come up to me and say things like, oh, you've got a new book. I'm going to give this to my sister. She's in a wheelchair. Or my father's a shut-in and all he does is read mysteries. I'm going to get this for him. Or I think I'll take this to the hospital with me next week. And I started to catch on that, you know, people value the escape that mysteries give them. Mysteries, I believe, give you the greatest amount of reader involvement, and they're meant to. You're trying to solve the murder before the end of the book when it's explained to you by the author. So you're paying attention to every little detail because that could be a clue. You're watching what the protagonist does to see if you would do it. You're waiting to see what the antagonist does to retaliate. You're really involved, and you're not paying any attention to your own life for whatever number of hours you're reading the book. And I never looked at my work the same since I figured that out. And I must say that writing, you know, since we're all sharing everything, the therapy for me was when I was 65. That was a while ago. I was writing a book and decided, I was at a low point and I was writing a book just for me. I decided to give a minor character an abusive husband. So I had to research it, and I went to a women's shelter manager and asked questions, and she gave me reading. I got to about the 7th or 8th warning sign in one of the books, and I thought, wow, my father did all those things. And I finally had closure for my childhood and all the things I didn't understand in my father's behavior. So it worked a couple different ways for me.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Donna. Truly appreciate that. And I know I said it before, Donna is a phenomenal author. You should all go read her books. Matt, please.
You know, as we're talking about healing, I think a lot about the context of different words like healing, how we're referring to it. And, you know, what's come to me is like a return to your natural orientation, right? It's like if we're thinking about healing in terms of health, what's our body's natural orientation? It's not one of disease, it's one of health. What's our spirit's natural orientation? One of imagination. It's being in that right place. And we can say that there are so many things that can get in the way of healing that need to be healed, like you know, psychological biases, stories that you've adopted, things like that, that need to be unblocked so that you can return to that place of natural orientation. And really that's what we're doing as artists, is we already live there. And when we're creating from that place, it's like well, it's not as if we are reminding people of that natural orientation and inviting people to return to it. So when we're putting that out into the world, we're saying, let me show you the beauty that I see. Let me show you what is over on this side, really where our home is. Let me invite you to come back to this place. And so the more that we're able to do that, that's really, to me, the purpose of art, is helping people to remember that, is to, in a felt present sense, and how I'd relate that with mythical art specifically, is that these are stories which are naturally born into us. They're not things that we invented. They're things that came upon us, that we discovered. They're real. They pre-exist before our conceptions. And so to be able to remind people, this is who you truly are. This is the dynamism. This is the power. This is the beauty, the majesty of what actually exists inside of you. So let me invite you to come back and realize it once again within yourselves. And so when we're able to do that through all of our artwork in so many different ways, we're helping people to remember all the vibrancy through music, through visual art, through poetry, all these things. This is the fullness of who you actually are.
Matt, your statement, what we do reminds people of who they are. I think that's, I'm going to steal that. That's really very, very good. Thank you. Amy, please.
Gotta steal it from me too, then. I've known Matt for a while. He's a wonderful person to work with. One of the most, this is kind of a combination of Donna and what I know Sabine does. But one of the most profound experiences I had was when I had to play do simulation, which is acting. And I had to take on the roles of various high-risk moms that had the potential of not making it or their babies not making it. And I had to completely take on the role of these people. So, like Donna, I'd go do research. Who am I? And so I would watch videos, I would read things, I would put myself living in certain places, having certain mannerisms. I would wear the right clothes to make it look and feel like I was like that. And when I went in to be the mom, I mean, I already was a mom, but I had to go way deep down inside my soul and get the energy of my momness and say, what if this really was me? And what if I really was going to lose my babies? And my babies were, I guess, teenagers by this time. So when I would get into that mindset, the rest of the world did disappear. I was in the simulation, and that's the biggest thing about medical simulation is suspending disbelief, which means people believe it's real. And I believed it was real. And when I was communicating with these people, the more real it was, the more intense emotions we both had. And there was always that one little pinnacle moment that changed everything. And whether it was a physical connection or a seemingly physical connection, everything in the room changed. And that's what made the long-term learning, change, energy release happen. And so my question is to Sabine, because she probably performs the same role, whatever, 5 times, 10 times, 15 times. But I'm sure that there's like those peak moments where the audience is there. There's this increase in energy. And then when something happens, you look at that person, you touch that person, you say the right words, you breathe at the right time. The whole emotion of the audience goes, and there's just that intensity of release. So that was kind of a big lead up, but I wanted everybody to know where I was coming from because I thought it was super intense, and Sabine does it for a living. So I was just curious how she would like to describe it.
It's true. Yeah, I agree with that. Is that okay if I answer that directly?
Yeah, please do.
Everyone? Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah, and why can the audience? Why comes the sigh of relief from the audience? Because everyone has that aspect. Everyone is also like that. Like we are all of it. We are none of it and all of it, so to say. Yeah. So that brings me back to maybe I outline quickly if we talk about art as therapy, the way I started out was always, I just loved as a child already to be someone other than the idea of Sabine. So that resulted in when someone asked me as a child, well, what do you want to be when you're grown up? What do you want to be? I wanted to be a firefighter, a nurse, a teacher, a scientist, a gardener. I couldn't make up my mind, impossible. I wanted to be something different every day. Sometimes I wanted to be one thing in the morning and another thing in the afternoon. So here I am ending up as an actor. And I think what kicked me into it eventually into the madness of wanting to do that professionally. Anyhow, and then I understood with the years. This is about expansion, as was said before, being more than ourselves, so to say. And I quickly realized when I had my education that I really had to. Healing came as a natural consequence, actually. I mean, if someone throws at you characters that you have to work at in drama school, like a Magda Goebbels, for example, I am of German origin, so these roles were thrown at me, wisely thrown at me because these were the most challenging things in my education, obviously, to allow my Sabine self to go to these places. And when you do, you realize, oh, well, you come to another, the next consequence or the next step of understanding for me, and I think that would be probably similar for everyone, is the concept of forgiveness. Because every character that I played had very good reasons to do what they do, or was at a place where it's totally 150% understandable to act the way they did. That does not mean that as Sabine I would appreciate that or tolerate behavior like that, obviously. But on a very deep level, if I want to play a character, whatever that is, and the worse, the more challenging, of course, but also the more healing they are, so to say, I have to be their biggest advocate. I have to be their best friend. I have to love them. And then I come to the one thing that I really wanted to say tonight is actually the word forgiveness. I think my biggest recognition with my work as an actor was the act of forgiveness. If I can't do that, if I don't do that, I cannot play any alcoholic who is killing their neighbor, or someone, to stick with that extreme example, a Magda Goebbels, for example, who killed their 7 children.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabina. I apologize. I've been mispronouncing your name because I'm an American. What do I know? And just so everyone knows, Sabina does not go around killing children.
No, oh my God.
No. Phenomenal actor and voice artist, though. Ken, please, what were you going to share with us?
You gave me a perfect lead in. Okay. Sabina, you don't go around killing children. But you could. You could. And one of the things when we talk about art as therapy and I heard it in Matt's portion particularly, we mean something positive. We mean art brings us closer to something wonderful, mystical, connection to a higher being, etc. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the way it works, is it? Because we are humans, and while we might want to believe we're this wonderful creature, this godlike, caring, angelic creature, in reality, no, we're not. In reality, we're pretty friggin' evil, if you ask me, most of the time. All things considered, if I were going to make a kind of a reincarnation thing to, who comes back and what's the top of that, humans wouldn't be close to the top. Orangutans would be up there, bonobo would be up there, dolphins might be up there, some of the whale groups might be up there. Humans, for me, I think we're just maybe on a par with cockroaches some of the time. And if you look at our art, if you look at our creativity, a lot of it is pretty gosh darn horrible, evil stuff. We make war. We make death. We make suffering. We make people starve. We make people, in the name of our higher attributions, we make people enslave people. We're not all that good. And I think it behooves us, if we want to be real artists and hold to helping humanity be the best that we can be, that we never lose sight of the fact that we constantly not only have to be healing and forgiving of others, but we have to constantly be healing and forgiving the evil in ourselves and finding ways to rise above that. And so I think art challenges, when I sit down to write, I'm constantly challenged. What do I want to do, and how evil is what I want to do to this character? Or what horror do I want to put in this poem, and how do I offset it? And as particularly, if you've read any of Joseph's work, he's very good at creating horrible stuff. You're even better at it than I am. So, let us not in praise of art forget that it has its roots as much in evil as it does in something pure, or maybe pure evil.
Let me take a moment to thank Ken for letting everyone know I'm an evil prick bastard. And Sarah, please, what are you going to share with us?
How can I follow that? I guess it's, for me, it's slightly different as an artist. It's not, I don't get to play different characters. But what I do have to do is to open myself up to my own truths, which means that I'm not pretending to be something that I'm uncomfortable with. I am that person that I'm uncomfortable with. And art exposes that for me. It exposes my vulnerability, it exposes my perfectionist side, which is really damaging. It exposes my feelings of lack. It exposes the fact that I spent my whole life not forgiving myself, like Sabina was talking about, and how awful that was in terms of me and being able to show up as me. I realized just before I was an artist how much I was masking who I actually was, and how much I wanted to hide all the crappy bits about me. So although I'm not evil, going around killing people or anything like that, and I can't play that character, or I can't write that character into my art as perhaps as sort of obviously as other people can with their mediums, but I do think it exposes our humanness. And as an artist, I feel I've not been able to hide from that humanness, which is frail, vulnerable, and full of flaws. And but I thank it because, just like Sabina was saying, that, you know, we have to forgive all of us for us to, you know, to be able to love ourselves fully. We have to be accepting of the parts of us that we don't always want people to see. So, you know, I think what I'm trying to say is art brings us back to our raw truths, you know, of who we actually are, no matter what art we do. And that is the slight difference, I would say, with, say, doing a sport, which, although we can lose ourselves into that meditative process of, you know, punching the boxing, maybe people will disagree with me, but I don't know whether it kind of, maybe it does. Maybe actually I'm going to completely disagree with myself. Perhaps all these forms of things show and expose our truths. But yeah.
Sarah, that again, we're having a lot of profound statements coming out here. That was, yeah, that was very deep to me. So thank you for sharing that. Amy, please.
So this comment is based upon what Kenneth was talking about, creating and destroying and the dichotomies of good and evil. And Teresa, I'm going to call Teresa out on this. Teresa primarily is a publisher, but what you all don't know, and she might not speak about, is that she works with clay. And when Kenneth was speaking, all I could see was Teresa's hands going up and down the clay. I mean, like this little bit of forgiveness, like a finger moving in a certain direction, a thumb moving in a certain direction, the spinning of the wheel going faster or slower can create and destroy things instantaneously. And if you don't like what you're doing, if you don't forgive yourself, if you don't give yourself a break, and forgive yourself or whoever might have made you move your finger the wrong way for a split second, you can instantly destroy the clay and build it right back up again. And to me, the profoundness of what Kenneth was talking about, because artwork isn't always like, oh, I'm happy and I'm enlightened. I mean, maybe your artwork is dark and dismal or something, but I was trying to relate it to different types of art. And so clay came to mind first. So if when Teresa speaks, maybe she could address that in some way. But the second one, because Mark's eyes were scrunching down like that a little bit, is Mark, you Mark, you love music. You love the intricacies of music. You can hear all those little nuances back there because you told me that you don't listen to Pandora and iTunes and all that because it takes away, it waters down the music. So there's a distinct difference between the watered down music that we hear on the radio and everything like that, and what you hear in the authentic version of the music. And little tiny nuances can make your heart go, oh yes, or oh my gosh, yes. And so I would reckon to say that you do know what we're talking about as it corresponds to musical notes.
And just so you know, that scrunched up, that's my listening face. No, it is.
Okay, good.
I've been busted on that a number of times.
I'll put a note, Mark's listening face.
My wife gets on me all the time about my furrowed brow.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Amy. Teresa, please.
Thanks for calling me out, Amy. So, this is really good, and I'm glad I'm here. This is my first time at the round table, and I love the topic of art and all that you're bringing to the table. I do want to talk about clay, and I do want to talk about the pottery process because it is a metaphor for life. And exactly what you said, Amy, it can either be awesome or it can be scrunched down into nothing, depending on what you decide to do with it. And, despite the fact that some of us have dark perspectives, and some of us have light perspectives. We are all connected, and we go through what we go through when we go through it at the time that is perfectly right for us. I believe that each one of us came here with gifts and talents, and I recognized my talent and my gift for making pottery at a young age. The first time I made pottery in a high school classroom, the teacher said to me, "You've done this before." I had no memory that I did it, but I knew exactly what I was doing. It was in what I call my knowing. It came with me. And I think somebody said this before. I think Matt might have said this before. So when I landed here on planet Earth, however that may have happened through my parents, I came with a certain gift, several of them actually, which I am extremely grateful for. With the pottery situation, the pottery taught me a lot of things about myself, taught me a lot of things about life in general, how I could handle it, how I could create it. And if I didn't do everything in a way that I thought had to be perfect, it will show up as it has to be in the first place, because everything that we touch, we bring life to. I believe that. And so from the pottery process, a lot of people, who's afraid of fire here? I mean, the pottery process of putting pots in the kiln, the first time in the fire is a purification. So it takes all of the things that we don't need out of the clay. And if you haven't done everything that's necessary in order to be able to get into the fire, one of two things can happen. If you have, you can create a strong, versatile pot. If you haven't, the thing can blow up in the kiln. So, and it can take other things out with it too. Like I've had people that have made their pots just too thick, had an air bubble in it, got trapped in there, blew up and took out everything on the shelf. And how many times have we seen that happen in our lives? I just think that what we put into anything is what we get out of it. And whether we want to have, whether it's words, whether it's pottery, I'm blessed to be able to have taken what I learned in pottery and be able to put it into words for a variety of different ways, and then ultimately help other people do the same thing. So this group has blessed me today, and I just want to say thanks for inviting me.
Teresa, welcome. And that metaphor about the kiln being like life, I'm stealing that too. Just letting you know. We do, everyone in this group, I think we're just, we steal from each other, whether we admit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not the only evil one here. Mark, please.
Thank you, but I think Matt's hand was up before mine. I don't know how that switched. And so, Matt, I just want you to know that I didn't cut in front of you. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it was when I spoke up and I was commenting about the brow that it decided to lower my hand. So
I see. Okay.
And I also want to thank Kenneth for your comments. I really think it's sparked a lot of a lot of neurons going on in my brain. And it reminds me of, I was thinking about the definition of heroism and what came to me, and it doesn't have as much to do with self-aggrandizement or like, oh, I'm a special one, whatever. I think what it really means is someone who is committed to the good in the face of things that are around you. Because we go through all these moments of pain in our lives. I wish I came up with this. I heard this in a video once. It's absolutely profound. That the distinction between the heroic path and the villain path is what you choose to do in those moments of pain. Say, you go through pain and you say, oh, this thing happened to me, and therefore I'm going to push it out onto the world. I'm going to make it every other one, other people's problem. I'm going to take this pain and I'm going to reflect it. I'm going to magnify it. You may not say that to yourself. You may self-deceive, but it's, you're saying you're fully justified in your pain and you're going to push it out, right? Or you say, this happened to me, and I don't want anyone else to experience the same thing that I went through. I'm going to choose a good path. I'm going to take this and I'm gonna make the world better than what I experienced. And that being able to process that is absolutely critical because you can go down a path of destruction or one path of light. And we get into this argument of, whether I don't know what all of your spiritual or religious beliefs are, but I can pick up some of it through our conversation. But this idea in Christianity, right, where or people who struggle with Christianity, like, well, if there's such a loving God, then why is there all this shit happening in the world, right? Because you don't want to praise a cruel, mean-spirited God. Of course, you want to praise one of light, right? But I believe that it's a full spectrum. In existence, there's an entire spectrum. There's an upper path and there's a lower path, and we're right in the middle. So it really matters a great deal which path you choose. So being able to make that choice in those moments of pain, to say, I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a better choice. And I believe that creativity really helps us to make that path. It really helps us to be able to process that pain. Because if we can't do that, then it's like gravity. Then we're automatically going to fall to the easiest thing, which is just to take that pain and make it other people's problem, right? So I think that's an absolutely critical function that we can be doing as creators, is to help people to get to that place where you can most easily make that choice to take the higher road, to make the better choice and create a better world for yourself and for the people around you.
Hey, Matt, can I ask you to repeat that quote you texted to me?
Which one today?
About grudges.
Oh, what did I say? I don't hold grudges because that would be less hands that I would have to create art. Something like that.
It was along those lines, but it was really cute and really profound all at the same time, because if he was holding on to grudges, how would he make his artwork?
Right. I'd be
Thank you.
stifling myself and not doing really any good for other people anyway.
Very good. Thank you. Mark, please.
Well, first thing I want to say is that Teresa is not just a publisher. Teresa is my publisher. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is, Joseph, related to your comment about experience and intuition and what Amy said early on about surgeons operating by intuition. It's because of surgeons who operate on intuition and don't have the experience that God invented malpractice insurance. So I just wanted to point that out. But I actually wanted to comment on what Sabina was saying, because I started to make some connections when you were talking, Sabina. And Rick, you might actually be the perfect person to follow me here, because I believe you're an attorney. And one of the first things that went through my mind, Sabina, when you were talking about forgiveness, seriously, was defense attorneys. Because I've never been particularly able to understand how defense attorneys do what they do. And you gave me a key, I think, which is for forgiveness and accepting people's humanity. And then the very next thing I started to think about was Frankenstein. And I may have shared in this forum that as a late blooming college student, I was reading Frankenstein, and the professor asked the class, why do we consider Victor's creature to be monstrous? And his answer was, because he has no human connections and no possibility, given his circumstances, of making human connections. And if you've read the novel, you understand that that creature is a highly sympathetic character. And while you were talking, again, Sabina, I wrote down monstrosity and sympathy. And I think what you were just saying, Matt, those things exist together. And I think the gift in what you do, Sabina, and what the perspective you gave to me is that those two things exist together. And we have to be cognizant and able to accept both. And please forgive me, I can't lower my hand because my computer froze. So just ignore my hand, unless you can put it down, Joseph.
Yes, I could. Rick, would you defend what Mark just said, please?
Sympathetically.
I'm not sure I can, Mark, but as far as your comments on criminal defense lawyers, I am not one, although I do know ones, and they tend to be very arrogant, because you sort of have to be, because when you're going up against the state or federal government, it's just you against the government, literally. You don't have a police force and FBI behind you to do your investigation. And but sometimes they do realize the government is overcharging or charging the wrong person. Now that's sort of Perry Mason, most people being charged aren't really innocent, but a number of them are. And it's really pathetic when people have been convicted of rape and murder when they were completely innocent, but the jury wanted to find somebody guilty. That just happened here in Hawaii. 3 guys spent decades in prison. One was even murdered in prison, and they were completely innocent. They finally got exonerated by DNA evidence, and the murderer, who was found out by DNA evidence, he then committed suicide when he found out the police were coming after him. But going on to the topic at hand, I'm not sure I have much profound to say, other than Joseph, you must be a great writer because you are so willingly and able to steal from others. That's what T.S. Eliot said, bad artists imitate and great artists steal. So that means you're a great artist, Joseph, by the definition of T.S. Eliot at a minimum. But as far as healing and therapy, I was been thinking about that all week as to what we should, or what I could talk about, I should say. As I've said many times, for me, it's not that I have to write. It's not that I want to write. It's like I think everybody else on here, whether you're an artist, an actor, or a writer, it's like you have to write. So there's a drive to write. So is the healing and the therapy, is that the driving force and the impulse to make us do this? Or is it a natural consequence of our creating? And clearly, I think the answer is really both. Everything in life really tends to be a cult, and you can't make fine lines between them. All I can say is that, as I mentioned a number of times, I began writing when I was in grade school and high school, a little bit in college, and then for 29 years, I didn't do any writing at all. I moved to Hawaii, had my law practice. I wrote as a lawyer, legal briefs, appellate briefs, put creativity in that, but it was all persuasive writing. But and even though I made a living and was able to eat and buy a house and all that kind of stuff, there was something missing. And then when I went back to writing in 2011, I really, really, really enjoyed myself. I really did. And then I started writing short stories a few years ago, and I think I mentioned when I realized I wrote 1 or 2 stories in a year, I goes, that was the best thing I did that entire year, more than any of my legal work. So I guess I didn't write my novel for therapy or for healing, although when I am honest with myself, some of my short stories, I can see there was sort of a cathartic experience in writing that. I'm not writing directly about like losing a best friend or a great love that didn't quite work out or anything like that, but yet that theme is in there. That theme is in there, and and whether you want to call it therapy or healing, or the driving force, or all of the above, it sort of explains how I was able to write that. Now, not every story, but lots of the stories, and so nothing profound, but part of this panel is just to share your experiences and thoughts, and that's sort of what I had to share.
As always, Rick, a pleasure hearing you speak because it's very persuasive. And I think all of us who are performing in some artistic endeavor, I think we're all working to persuade people one way or another. Amy, may I ask you, ask Sarah a question? Would you and Ken be willing to wait a moment? Sarah, you at the beginning, you mentioned three things. Two of them we were able to touch on, and unfortunately, I apologize, I cut you off before the third one. Would you be willing to share that third piece?
Well, in many ways, we've kind of covered the third one within our discussion. So sort of like, thinking about the themes that we wish to create from and the symbols that we want to put within our work, how it exposes the humanness of us and, so, and the healing that we can get from that, So I was thinking about the animal wisdom that I use in my art. I remember very, very distinctly driving up to speak to my ex-partner, and it was going to be a very difficult conversation, and I was really, really nervous, and I was texting a friend, and that friend said to me, "Why don't you take on the spirit of the fox that you're painting at the moment?" Ooh, like that idea. And then he said, resourceful, he's smart, he uses his cunning, he's adaptable, things like that. And I thought, oh, I like this. And I know it's not particularly new to a lot of you, but it felt really new and vibrant to me. I know that, your shaman book discusses a lot of those kinds of themes. So I was that's why I was very aligned with that piece of work that you did. And and that at that point, that was what I thought, I know this is what I need to do, and this is what I need to explore in my art further and further. And the journey it's taken me on is amazing, because it's not just the animal wisdom, it's also coming back to Matt's artwork and what he was saying about the myths and the stories that are older than us, older than our art and so on. I incorporate a lot of that in the work that I do with other women. I do storytelling, and then we respond to that storytelling with our artwork, which is really, really profound way of mixing things that expose our humanness and our human truths. So yeah, we kind of covered it, really, that third level, that deep subconscious level. Yeah.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that. After Amy and Ken, I do want to get back to something we mentioned in the prep session, which was the witch wound and the sister wound. Because, as Rick said, I have to steal them. Amy, please.
Thank you, evil one.
To be known.
I want to look at the other side of the coin for a moment, because we're all talking about being in a state of flow and energy release. But what happens when your energy gets truncated and you can't write, you can't make clay, you can't write a book, you can't paint, you can't do these things because something has truncated your energy. So my next example, Mark, does not need any legal type of binding agreement. But when I was, for my entire life, up until 7 years ago, I played basketball. I played competitive basketball year round. I coached children. I never coached adults. They're not very fun to coach. But it was a different type of cathartic release, because you're out there and you're sweating and you're running and you are in the zone, like metaphorically and literally. You have to go in the zone of the basketball court. Um, but honestly, like something that I've told somebody is when you're in your sport or when you're in your physical expenditure, you don't think about it. I never thought, hey, I'm going to catch the ball, I'm going to dribble down the court, I am going to step with one foot, jump with the other, and throw the ball up with this hand and hit the backboard, and then the ball is going to go in the basket. I never once thought that. I mean, maybe as a little kid I did, maybe like third or fourth grade. But when you're in the flow, you can literally go from one side of the court to the ball going into the basket, and it seems instantaneous. Like you have absolutely no idea how you got there, and that ball, the momentum of the ball was greater than the momentum of your hands. And it's physically impossible to have the momentum of that ball going if you're not completely in your flow. And then lo and behold, somebody fouls you. They will call, everybody stop, and you have to walk up to the foul line with this entire flow stopped. And making a foul shot should seemingly be very easy. You stand in the exact same spot. There's a nail in the middle of every foul line that you line your body up with, and you make the exact same shot every time. You look at professionals, I mean, I'm like, you get what, 30-40%? I'm like, that's lame. I'm like, you know, because it should be the easiest shot. And so what I strived to do when I was younger was to block out the rest of the world, which in ninth grade sounds really super weird. But when I would go up to the foul line, didn't matter how many people were in the stands, how many coaches were yelling at you, how many players wanted to knock you down again, I didn't hear anything except my breath. And I didn't see anything except the rim. And even back then, my foul shooting was like 80-90%, which is pretty phenomenal. I can't do that now. But it's the feeling, it's the flow. And it wasn't the flow of the court, the flow of the team, the flow of the energy. It was my own flow. And so back 7 years ago when I stopped playing, I had to stop playing because of a car accident, and I'm not really very good anymore. My arm doesn't work, my leg doesn't work, and trying to find something to replace that energy release and that flow and that zone that I was in was really difficult. I mean, fortunately, I have hiking and nature and things like that, which are great. I love being in nature and hiking and being out there and creating my nature trails, but I still haven't quite found anything to replace that, I guess, bubble of energy, which is probably what a lot of people feel when they're creating their artwork, is that big bundle of energy that you're in. And it's not like it's three-dimensional. It's actually probably more than three-dimensional, but we're inside of it. And it's this big vortex, which is what allows us to move. And so that's kind of my question, is when your energy, when your flow, when it is truncated, what do you do to kind of restart your energy, to unblock the blockage and to continue on in the creative process?
Thank you, Amy. I'm gonna hope some others answer that.
Beautiful lead in for me. Beautiful lead in for me. That's exactly where I was going. I was looking at, and our flow was going to be stopped soon. We're kind of pushing on time. And so I said to myself, you know, we haven't talked about ourselves as consumers of the art. And the answer to your question, Amy, for me, okay, is I use art. Okay. And I have certain artistic pieces or places that are regenerative for me. And I want to make a point about this, because all of us, we're artists, we're creating, we're hoping other people are going to read, watch, listen to, whatever, look at our creations. And, you know, hopefully some of those folks are actually even listening to this watching this discussion. And I'm a consumer as well as a creator. I'm a consumer. I've never gotten to see Sabina act. I would love to. Unfortunately, a little bit of distance interferes with that. But I will tell you that there are certain plays that I have gone to see many times or have reread. Garcia Lorca's The Wasteland, Yama. Oh my God. Oh my God. Pirandello's Tonight We Improvise. Oh my God. Oh my God. Guernica by Picasso. And almost anything Mahler ever wrote, if it's performed well, especially if Gustavo Dudamel is conducting, because I think he masters Mahler so wonderfully. But, you know, and there are others. I could sit here making a list of all the things that I love. But I'm wondering how many of you, my fellow 360-degree discussants, turn to other people's art, you know, and what arts do you turn to awaken you? And I'm sorry, Amy, I was a terrible athlete as a kid. I'm still a terrible athlete. And I never got a shot in my life, I don't think. So I could not join.
There's always ping pong.
We'll always have ping pong. Hey, Amy, I'm sorry. Try shuffleboard.
That's equally as important as ping pong.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much. Donna, please.
Hi, I was going to address the part about what you do if you're in a slump, because I began to talk about that. I, as you know, love writing, and a convergence of things made me really not enjoy it anymore. Never happened before. So I thought, okay, I've really got to do something about this because it's what I care about for myself the most. And so I just decided to write a book to please myself. I didn't care if anybody read it, wasn't going to show it to an agent, didn't care anything about, just pleasing myself. And that was the one with the abusive character. And so what I did was, the information that I got was often counterintuitive and surprising. And I thought how useful it would be for these people who are in that situation. 1 in 3 women or 1 in 4 women experience that in their lifetime, according to the research that you would do. And so I had my character educate herself the same way I educated myself and snuck it into a cozy mystery. And I thought to myself, here I am having the possibility of helping other people see what they're up against. And that book happened to do pretty well. And it was recognized by other people, which was very gratifying, because what I learned is when you please yourself, you have a better chance of pleasing others.
Thank you, Donna. Quite true. Yes, I've learned that in my own work. Teresa, please.
You said the magic word, true. I think Sarah said it very early on about truth. And I think, Donna, you have just brought out a real key point about, you know, learning the truth maybe from something that you were creating and didn't expect to find. You know, I think that we all need to make friends with the truth of who we are. You know, I think that for me, I have a fascination with people who have had near-death experiences. And one person whose story I read and who I heard in an interview said that when this experience happened to him, he actually stood before Jesus. I'm a Christian. stood before Jesus and got 10 things that we need to know as human beings. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to share them right here, because they're universal. And no matter what you believe, they're universal. So the first one is authenticity. Always be your authentic self. And I think that's where the word truth comes in. 2, Earth is a school. 3, love everyone. 4, use your inner voice, your intuition, your spirit, and your gut instinct. 5, understand your relationship with technology. It'll either lift you up or tear you down. 6, release prejudice. 7, if we control our thoughts, we control our creation and our outcome. 8, avoid negative influences. 9, evil has a purpose. Without it, without a bad choice, a good choice. There is no good choice. And number 10, we are all one. And I just feel like those points are so relative to each one of us as individuals on this planet and as creative spirits that we are. So I just wanted to share that with all of you.
Thank you, Teresa. 10 excellent points. For what it's worth, I believe those are the core parts of just about every doctrine across the globe. Personally, I not to make light of it, but you know, because I do this, I would want to put in there 11 and 12. Make sure you eat chocolate and have croissants handy. But that's me. That's me. Matt, please.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'll try and be brief too, for the sake of getting to the witch wounds and sister wounds as well. And thank you, Teresa, for your comments on authenticity, and actually ties right in with what's really coming through for me. And Amy, going back to the stuck states, right? When you feel that you know your creativity is stifled. By the way, I actually just put out a video on how to conjure up mythic inspiration, so I recommend you check it out. It has a lot to do with breath work and ritual and all that good stuff. But you know, when we're feeling stuck, I like to think, like, what is it that I need to learn here? Like, assuming there's a reason why we're in that state. What is it that I just have to be still enough to be able to listen to it? And when we listen to it and when we accept that, then that can bring us peace. And from that place of stillness, then we can get into that crucible of creation. Because then from that peace, we can go to joy, we can lift ourselves up. We're in the perfect place to make something magical, I think. You know, when we're right in that center, it doesn't just have to be this place where you feel stuck and you feel that you know, in stasis. I think stasis is a very, very specific thing, right? But in that place where you are in stillness and acceptance, that's like right next door to that feeling, I think. You know, and when you can get there, you have the freedom to move around and to, you know, really alter your state and you know, talking again about flow states. By the way, Joseph, you're right in my neighborhood with that one. It's one of my favorite subjects. So we can actually affect our state rather than being affected by the outside world, you know.
Matt, thank you. Crucible of creation. I'm going to ask you to never take up writing because I can't deal with the competition, okay? Sarah, please. Witch wounds and sister wounds. These are fascinating terms to me. Please.
Have I got 8 minutes? Is that all I've got left? Because
I'm willing to go over if everyone else is. So if everyone has to leave, you know, please do. Go ahead.
I mean, these are complex subjects to talk about, certainly in a short space of time. Both are just 2 of many psychological wounds in our collective consciousness. I was just talking about it when we were doing our prep, because we were talking about blocks that stop women in particular, because the witch wound and the sister wound affect women more than they affect men, because of the association with those wounds being largely to do with women. So the witch wound is a wound that it is, you know, they both have their basis in history and ancestral trauma. So there's a lot of myths about witch hunts. I suggest you read a book by Sharon Blackie called Haggitude, because she exposes a lot of the myths. But regardless of the myths, whether we really, you know, whether we've been fostering those myths or not, the witch wound is in our collective consciousness, because it's all about, you know, the witch hunts were all about women generally who were standing up to authority, who might have been on the edges of society, seen as weird, seen as people who were feared, really, because they were dealing with things that were the unknown and dealing with things that people couldn't rationalize or put logical explanation on. And because of that whole history that we have of the witch hunt, it does create a lot of uncertainty in women in showing up, being visible, being open to sharing who they are, their truths, because of that collective fear associated with, well, look, if I show up in my weirdness and I'm a little bit different, or if I start voicing my opinions about things against authority and that are authoritative viewpoints, then I'm going to be I'm going to feel really unsafe and uncertain and full of self-doubt. And that is a general thing that I have seen through a lot of women that I work with, a lot of women that I have been mentored by as well. You know, I've learned these things along the way. The sister wound is slightly different, because it's more to do with the whole, it doesn't have so much of that whole sort of like a societal sort of history as such, you know, that but it does, the sister wound, it affects us as in, I know I went to an all-girls school, for example, when I was a teenager, and that whole bitchy sort of talking about each other behind their backs really affected me, to the point where I, for a long time, found it very difficult to create friendships, lasting friendships with women, because I was always had that sort of fear that if I shared a secret, they would go and share it with everybody, you know, and I would be exposed in that way. The trust element of women coming together needs to be healed collectively, because of the fact that whether we've experienced or not, there is a lot of distrust about being in women's communities over history. I think that's changing a huge amount as we're sort of shifting into this sort of feminine energy that is really coming alive in our cultures over the last few years. I've definitely seen it. So yeah, I mean, it is quite difficult to talk about it in such a short space of time, and then, you know, but that's it in brief. Those are the two wounds that came up in our prep, and that is my take on it in brief. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And for our viewers and listeners, you're not able to see the comments, but we're going to be doing a full show on gender and sex, the next roundtable, because it is I apologize if this is a political statement. I do not necessarily mean it to be. Sometimes when I listen to the rhetoric of the US, my mind goes to not the midwife, the Handmaid's Tale. And it, particularly for me, it's very disturbing. I'll even go so far as to say frightening thing. Anyway, we are 1 minute away from time. Does anybody want to have like a one-line thing they want to add in here? Just to close us off. And so I can shut up.
I think that's your job, Joseph.
Shut up. Okay, good. Yep. A one-line closer. I want to thank everybody who's taken part. Ken had to leave. And I think this has been one of the best roundtables we've had. Thank you for the new faces here. Please reach out to me if you'd like to send me your credos so that I can include you in the list of people contributing to the forum. Many profound ideas, in my opinion. Some really meaningful discussions. All the roundtables had meaningful discussions. This one has been particularly meaningful to me, and I appreciate that. I thank you all again. I look forward to seeing you all again. Should you have any ideas for roundtables, please let me know. And listeners and viewers, please take part, step up, join us. The more voices, the more we learn. Thank you. Take care, all. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Roundtable 360, where creatives from diverse fields and across the globe gather to discuss what's relevant, irrelevant, serious, and fun. Roundtable 360 is brought to you by BizCatalyst 360 and Northern Lights Publishing. Our shows are taped the last Thursday of every month at 7:30 a.m. Hawaiian time, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, 6:30 p.m. London time, 19 hours 30 minutes Central European Standard Time, and whatever time that converts to, wherever you are. Please join us at http://nlb.pub/roundtable. That address is on your screen. See you next time, and until then, stay well and safe.